Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes, that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 115, and I am coming to you from a beautiful, bright, crisp, sunny day in Minnesota, where I live with my husband and our 2 young children. It is the middle of October, year 2023, and it feels like autumn, and it is just glorious. I'm not sure if we had frost last night, but the flowers outside look slightly droopy, so it's very possible that we had frost. I don't know. They don't look like they have their usual vibrant luster, so it might be time to clean all of that up. I am so glad you are here visiting with me today. Honestly, I wasn't sure this was going to happen this week, which is totally fine because I don't really run it on a schedule. I run it based off of whether or not I can schedule it in. And then I thought, okay, but if I push it to next week, I'm also not sure if next week would work out. And you know what? I didn't want October to just fly by without me checking in here, because I do have lots of things that I would love to share with you today. Things that I have finished, things that I'm working on, things that I just couldn't wait to cast on, things I plan to cast on. I think part of it is that chill in the air and those leaves dropping. It makes me want to just conjure up all the coziness, and yeah, so here we are. If you are new here, a big warm welcome to you. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back to chat a little bit with me today. The way I usually organize my videos, if you are new here, is that in the beginning there's a little bit of a vlog section, usually around 5 minutes plus or minus some, of various scenes throughout the last couple of weeks or whenever it is that I recorded last. Usually it's nature scenes, sometimes baking, things like that. And then we go into an intro section. I update you on weather. I update you on garden stuff if there's stuff growing. And then we go into finished projects, and then works in progress, and then an eats and reads section about what I'm reading, any new recipes I've tried, any tried and true recipes that I have been cooking up in the last week or so. And then sometimes there's a food for thought section where I share something that has been on my mind, something that I have been able to more or less form into some sort of tangible, cohesive thought to share with you. Sometimes there is a homework assignment if you choose to take me up on that challenge. By no means is it ever a way for me to tell you what to do, tell you how to think, or anything like that. It is simply me sharing a little bit of something that I have been thinking about, what's on my heart, what's on my mind, and maybe it resonates with you, or maybe it doesn't, and that's okay too. So, we recently went on a fall colors trip. That's what we always call it. I'm not sure. Fall hiking, leaf seeking, I don't really know. But it is something that we do every year, at least once if possible. Well, once if it's like away overnight, but we'll do several day hikes closer to home. And this time all of our family came, so it was 11 people, 2 dogs, and it was so wonderful. And we saw so many beautiful colors and leaves, and I think if it hadn't rained recently, maybe there would be more leaves in the trees, but the trails were blanketed in orange maple leaves, and it did rain a bit on one of the hikes that we went on, and it was a little chilly, like 45 degrees Fahrenheit and raining. But we all had a great time, and we were able to go back to the cabin that we rented out to house all of us, start a fire and warm up and get all our stuff dried. So that was so nice. And hopefully I will have inserted maybe some pictures here on the side, but definitely I will have had them in the vlog in the beginning, in case you skipped it and want to go back and look. Speaking of skipping, I do include timestamps for the various sections in my episodes. I don't know if you call them chapters, but that way if you are skipping around, you can hopefully find the spots relatively easily, or if you're watching the video over several days or throughout the day, that hopefully that kind of breaks it up a little bit. And then also maybe if you're looking for something specifically, it can help make things maybe hopefully easier to find. I find it easier for myself, so maybe it will help you out as well. I do include closed captioning in all of my videos. You can also adjust the speed should my speaking speed be faster or slower than your preferences, so you can change that as well. And I do include links to all the designers, makers, things like that I talk about in the description box below this video. Sometimes there's an arrow or you click show more and it will bring up the list of things. And then I also use Ravelry for all of my project pages. Or no, I create Ravelry project pages for all of my projects. There you go. And so details on all of that stuff will be there. But as a heads up, I do include a lot of that information, if not all or more, here on my YouTube channel, just to keep that information more accessible. But the notes are there if you choose to access the information that way as well. And then speaking of, in those project pages, I include the link where I talk about the project, either as a work in progress or as a finished project. That way it also makes it a little bit easier to find that information. Okay, I think that is it for that. And let's just jump right into the finished projects section. So for finished projects, I have the tee that I am wearing, and it's so exciting. So this tee is just released. It is the Trestle tee by Tiff Nealon, and I was a tester for this pattern. It is a sport weight pattern, and I knit it in a new to me yarn called Widgeon. The Widgeon base is by Pearl Soho. You know what? Let me grab the tag real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. This is the tag. It is 100% fine Falkland merino. It comes in 359 yards for 100 grams. It is a non-superwash yarn, and the color I used is whiskey brown. And this yarn, okay, so I haven't tried a ton of different yarn fibers. So my ability to distinguish between all of them may not be the most, the word that's coming to mind is robust, but I'm not sure if that's the word I'm looking for. Maybe. I mean, I just don't have like the range to be able to compare. I will say that it did feel different. Like there was almost a texture to it. Not rough, not scratchy, but just like the thing that comes to mind is like a teddy bear softness. And I don't know if that really accurately describes it, but there was a little bit of texture to the yarn. It is not thick and thin. It was pretty even. The coloring is very even. This is a very warm brown, an orangey brown, but definitely a brown. And I feel like it blocked out very smoothly into a nice cohesive fabric, and yet it also still has good stitch definition. There's not like any cabling or anything like that to show it if it would like pop out, but I feel like the ribbing looks very crisp and the lace opened up nicely and is very even. The tension's very even. And then for this contrast, I used a different sport weight yarn, but also by Pearl Soho. This is Good Wool, something Loganberry, fresh Loganberry. And it's this like jammy, heathered, purpley, red undertone color. And I just really like that with the orangey brown. And the contrast color uses minimal yardage, and so I had it remaining from a previous project, and that's what I used. This tee that I plan on using as a slipover, mostly because this lace panel here doesn't really make it so that I would wear it on its own personally, but I would definitely wear it as a layering piece, which is what I intended for it to fill that role in my wardrobe. And so I did make a couple modifications to the pattern. I knit, let me grab my notes here. I knit the second size out of, I believe it's out of 10 sizes. and that would give me about 5 inches of positive ease in the chest circumference. And it is knit top down. The neckband is picked up afterwards. It's got an interesting construction. I don't knit a lot of drop shoulder construction garments, and so it was kind of a fun new way to work my brain. Although I feel like recently, I paused earlier because I feel like recently I have picked up quite a few drop shoulder construction garment patterns, but I think that's also because it's kind of having a moment. I feel like there's a lot of patterns out that are drop shoulder construction, and it's kind of fun to change things up a little bit. And if you're unfamiliar with what that means, basically garments in general have a type of construction. So there's raglan shaping, which has the increases on both sides of the shoulders. There's a round yoke where the increases are divided throughout, and drop shoulder has this kind of shoulder shaping going on, and that can be knit bottom up or top down. And yeah, there's just different ways to construct a garment. And some people find certain types of constructions to be better suited for their body and how they want it to fit. So far, I feel like it more so depends on how the garment is constructed in the shaping, and in the way the increases are built in. So I feel like a raglan for me generally is actually easier to modify as well, and I have more control over how I want the fabric, like where I want more fabric or not. But then circular yoke, I find that sometimes harder to adjust because the way the increases are set up, it's not all even throughout. Like, it's not like every other row or round or whatever. Anyway, so I feel like that's a little harder for me to adjust personally if I want to make modifications. And then a drop shoulder construction is my least experienced area, so I definitely don't have a lot of experience modifying that. However, that being said, I do find drop shoulder constructions easy to modify the arm hole. I guess the other ones are relatively easy to modify that too, but I will get to that. So this pattern I mentioned is sport weight, and the needle sizes I used are US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter for the main fabric. For the hem and the collar, the recommendation is a US 6, but I went down to a US 5 because I just like the look of my ribbing on 2 needle sizes smaller than my main fabric usually. And then for the sleeve cuffs, it's a 2-color fisherman's rib, and so that one we go down to a US 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter needle. And I did get gauge, and I modified it slightly in the sense that I cropped it. The pattern goes for a little bit longer, and I cropped it because I knew I was going to wear it as layering piece over dresses or over blouses or over button-up shirts, so I didn't want it to go past my hips. There is a split hem and a high-low hem detail, which I think works well in how I'm wearing it, and I feel like if it's longer, that works out well as well because my hips are wider than the rest of my torso, and so having that split hem would make it less constricting looking, and it would go well as a layering piece for that. And so knowing where I wanted to crop it, I looked at my other sweaters, I looked at what I wanted to wear it with, and I knew the length that I wanted for the body section. So that's how I figured that out. For the sleeve cuffs, because I knew that I wanted it as a layering piece, I did increase the front and back panels by 4 rows. And then when I was picking up stitches for the sleeves, I made sure to pick up 4 extra, I think. I did 4 or 8. I think I did 4 extra. Well, now I can't remember if I did 4 extra or if I did 8 extra. Well, in any case, I did it slightly bigger because I knew I wanted it as a layering piece, and I didn't want my arms to feel restricted in that area. I have worn it over button-up shirts. I have worn it over a dress like you see here. This is my mashup Hinterland Metamorphic dress that I discussed in a previous episode that I'll link to. I have on a thin long sleeve shirt underneath, and it feels very comfortable. Oh, and while I'm here up close, I will show you my earrings. I believe I hadn't shown this third pair of Mayana earrings yet. I bought these from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers website, and these earrings are made by women in Colombia, and they are beaded and so beautiful. And I feel like these ones with the moon and the colors feel very autumnal, and they go really well with my outfit. Next up is my daughter's flax sweater. The flax sweater is a free pattern by Tin Can Knits. It has been out for a long time. There are two versions, fingering weight and a worsted weight. The one I knit here is the worsted weight, and I used Malabrigo Rios, which is 100% superwash merino, and it's a worsted weight yarn, and this color is called Peachy. It's a beautiful tonal yarn that has peach and yellows in it, and there is a little bit of variegation, and so I did alternate the yarns. I've talked about this pattern or the process of it quite a bit in previous episodes, so if you want to know more, I would go back some and check that out. I did change the neckband because I feel like the neckband on this pattern is too wide and for just my preferences, and so I used a much smaller needle. I used a US 5 for the neckband, and I knit probably about 4 inches or so of ribbing of 1 by 1, knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and then I knit to my cast on edge. It's very stretchy. There are no issues with it going over her head. I have a little satin ribbon sewn on the back here so she can differentiate the front from the back. I did do the short row shaping. That's an addendum to the pattern, and so the back is higher, which accounts for, you know, how our bodies are shaped, and the back has more surface area. She has tried it on. She says it's super comfortable. She requested a flax because she really likes the garter panels on the arms. She says it feels really nice, and so she likes that texture. I did knit the adult XS size for my 10-year-old, who is a 5th grader, and I believe, I can't remember now how much ease that gives. I want to say like 6 maybe inches of positive ease. I wanted a little bit of extra ease. Yeah, I think it's about 6 inches of positive ease for her because she wears it over dresses, over t-shirts, things like that. And I also don't want her to outgrow it immediately. The one I knit her previously, the 8 to 10-year-old size, still fits her as well. So now she has 2 flax sweaters, which is nice. I don't think I followed the sleeve decreases in the pattern because I knew I was going to make the sleeve slightly shorter than the adult extra small has in the pattern. I think I just knit even and then started doing some decreases and had her try it on, and then when I knew that I had about 2 inches, you know, to go, that made it easier for me to finish it off. But yeah, I love how it turned out. She finds it super comfortable, and it's so soft, and because it's super wash merino, there's no itch factor, and I can throw it in the wash if it gets super dirty. So I find that really nice for knits for the kids. It has to be soft and it has to be washable because kids get really dirty, and I don't want them to be fragile with their knits. I want them to wear them. I want them to live in them. I don't want to have to worry about it. And so she just absolutely loves it. I used 300 grams total. I used like almost every bit of the yarn. I will show you what is left. What is left is taped into my project journal. So I think I did pretty good on yarn management. Next up are my pumpkin spice socks. They are based off of the vanilla latte socks pattern, which is a free pattern, but then last I checked when I was trying to link to it for the show notes here, it wasn't available anymore, so I'm not sure what happened with that, but it is a free pattern that has been online for a long time. I knit those socks as part of the Falling Leaves sock knit along that is hosted by Denise of Earth Tones Girl. I'll have that hashtag here on the screen so you can see what it is and play along. You just have to knit socks, and they can be any size, they can be any weight of yarn. You can check out Denise's Instagram for more details on that, and it runs through the middle of November. So I don't have my socks to show you because I wore them recently on our hiking trip, and I believe they're still in the wool laundry basket. And I will put a picture of them here on the screen so you can see them on sock blockers and also worn on my feet. And I had shared on Instagram each day of our hiking with me wearing a different pair of hand knit socks, and I called it Sock Cam. So now it's a thing. So if you wear your socks out somewhere, hashtag it with Sock Cam and see people wearing their socks. I think it's really fun. There is joy in making the socks, but also joy in wearing the socks, at least for me. And I make things to wear them, and so I know not everybody does that, and that's totally okay. It's fun to be able to see our hand knits out and about, and so that's the purpose of Sock Cam. So those socks are knit out of Mitchell's Creations yarn. Here is the tag. The colorway I used was Sunset Trails, and it's a light fingering weight yarn that I held double. It's a 75-25 superwash merino nylon that comes in 463 yards for 100 grams. And I find that this yarn is super durable in wash and wear, and I have several pairs of socks that have lasted several years that I've held double like this, and they've just worn really well. I also knit them at a slightly tighter gauge. I like to use US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needles when I'm knitting these DK weight socks. I just find that it gives a really cushy and dense fabric that wears well, because the less dense the fabric, the more likely it is to wear holes, and so the denser the fabric, the sturdier the fabric. Did I say that right? The denser the fabric, the sturdier the socks. There you go. The sturdier the socks. This is the yarn that I have left, and it is about 8 grams. I started with 103, I think about 103, 104 grams, and I have 8 left. And for reference, I wear a US 7 women's shoe size, which corresponds to a 9¼ inch foot, and I have an 8-inch foot circumference. And so the socks, the recipe I did was I cast on 48 stitches, old Norwegian cast on. I did a knit 2 purl 2 rib for 15 rounds, and that used about 13 grams of yarn. And then for the leg, I did a knit 6 purl 2 for 40 rounds, and I used about 30 grams of yarn for that. For the heels, I did a shadow wrap heel, and that used about 8½ grams. And this is for 2 socks for a pair. And then for the feet, I did stockinette on the bottom and then continued with the knit 6 purl 2 on the top of the foot. Oh, and I should backtrack to say that before I started the heel, I centered the purl channels. So I moved my beginning of the round over 3 stitches. For the feet, I did 50 rounds, and that brought me to about 7¼ inches, and I used 37 grams of yarn for that. I am rounding up a little, so at the end it may not come out to be the total exactly on what I said, but close enough. And for the toes, I ended up using about 8 grams, and yeah, and I ended up still with a little bit left over. So I did start with over 100 grams, but I did end up still with a little bit under. So for my feet, with my gauge, with how I knit these socks, I am able to use 1 skein of light fingering weight yarn held double to knit a pair of DK weight socks that go well into hiking boots. The next set of finished projects are part of a knit along hosted by Pearl Soho. It is based on their free pattern, the classic ribbed hat. I have knit so many of these hats. It is a very beginner friendly pattern and a very gift friendly project. It is knit all in a 1x1 rib, which is knit 1, purl 1, and the crown, so the top of the hat, has a neat little spiral finishing. And the yarn that is used for their pattern, which you don't have to use in order to participate in the knit along. To participate in the knit along, it is free. You can use whatever yarn you have. I have used fingering weight held double. I have used DK weight held on its own. I have used 100% superwash merino. I have used 75-25 superwash merino nylon. They've all turned out beautifully, and I've gifted a lot of these as well. It being ribbed, it has a lot of give, which makes it less fussy as far as sizing goes. That being said, I believe there's 5 sizes offered in the pattern, And I have a trio of hats that I've recently finished. In fact, so recently that one of them is still damp and making everything around it a little bit damp. I am participating in this knit along, and Pearl Soho did kindly send me some of their Cashmere Merino Bloom yarn to participate, but I have also purchased several on my own as well with their 25% off coupon for joining in on the knit along. So I'm going to show you what I've got here. Oh, they're so lovely. I don't know if the lighting will pick up the fuzzy halo on this beautiful yarn. It is definitely the most luxurious yarn I have ever knit with. It is a 70, I don't think, do I have it here? Yeah, 75% extra fine merino wool and 25% cashmere. It comes in 218 yards for 100 grams. Here's the back of the tag. And again, currently for participating in the knit along, if you sign up, which is free, you will receive a 25% off code to purchase this particular yarn. So this set of hats I have knit for a family that is very near and dear to my heart. I have been friends with one of them since second grade, and they don't live nearby, so I don't get to see them very often. And they've had some curveballs thrown into their life in the last several years, to put it lightly. I will not be sharing all of their personal information here on the internet. I will just say that they've had a rough time. And not being able to see them and not being able to hug them, not being able to share a meal and laugh with them has been tough. That being said, I will get to see them shortly because they will be visiting, and I have been working very hard on getting all of these done so I can hand them to them in person, and it's going to be wonderful. So I knit these two adult medium sizes for the parents, and this teal is High Tide. It's a beautiful heathered blue tealy color. And then this one is Dove Gray, which is a very soft neutral gray. This is the one that's still a little damp, and that's making everything else damp. And then for their son, I have knit this adorable one. Oh, that's the back. You can see my stripe jog there. And this one is using golden green, and the stripes are Dove Gray and High Tide. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, love it. So their son is 2, and I knit the kid size. And so it can be folded up where the stripes are hidden, or it can be worn not with the brim folded up. I'm not sure what his preference is, but as we know, most toddlers change their preferences minute to minute. So we will see what happens with that. The ones for the parents, I cast on adult medium, which is the 4th out of the 5th size. There's one larger one, and so this is 120 stitch cast on. It is using US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needles. I just knit it on a 16-inch circumference, which works really comfortably in my hands. And I weighed my yarn before and after a round, and I used 1 gram per round, which is really helpful in determining how much I can get out of one skein of yarn. The crown for me uses 16 to 17 grams of yarn, so I know that you knit this from the brim up. So I know I just need to make sure to have 17 grams of yarn remaining in order to finish the hat. I think because the gray one is still slightly damp, it's coming out slightly bigger, but I don't think it doesn't actually have more rounds. I believe it has either the same number of rounds as the High Tide, or maybe even like 1 or 2 rounds less, but it's showing up longer. I don't know what's happening. They are ribbed, so they're very stretchy, and maybe I'll try one of them on. I'll try the one on that is not wet. So it gives a very generous brim the way I have knit it. I may have knit it longer than the pattern. I think I did, because I wanted to use up more of the yarn. But here it is, folded up. And then it can definitely be worn slouchy or farther down, depending on how much of your forehead you like covered. When my hair was longer, I often had it in a bun, so I liked having that slouchiness so that I could keep my bun in my hair and not have to take it out. But yeah, I find this hat super comfortable, really warm, and I am so excited to be able to gift it to my friends, and hopefully it will bring them a little bit of comfort, a little bit of joy as we go into these colder months, and just let them know that I am always thinking of them. We are going to go into 2 sewing projects, and they are very October-ish. First, I will tell you that I had a mishap with my ironing board, and maybe I'll show you a picture here on the screen. But while I was ironing on my fusible fleece interfacing to my fabric, one of my interfacings was upside down. So the adhesive part that should stick to the fabric stuck to my ironing board. And I had very aggressively pressed that, and it's very aggressively stuck to my ironing board. The silver lining is I never liked that ironing board anyway. I've had it for over 10 years. It is very creaky. It sounds like the soundtrack of a horror movie every time you open it. And thankfully I don't have to put it away and open it anymore. I can just leave it out where I have my setup. But it has also lost all of the protective coverings that go on the bottom of the ironing board, on the feet that stick out. They've just gotten lost over several moves, over several years. And it's definitely a hazard. I'm thankful I don't have like super young children at home, because I probably wouldn't have it around anymore, because every time you kick it, it makes your toe bleed. So definitely a hazard. And the padding on top is pretty much non-existent. So if you press too hard, things end up with like the ironing board imprint on it, which is not fabulous. So yeah, it's time for it to go. I did ask for a much sturdier, not have to put away ironing board for Christmas, but judging on the state of this current ironing board, I may need that gift a little bit earlier. If you have a favorite ironing board that is very sturdy, not rocky, not creaky, and one that's built to last forever, maybe, I would love to hear what ironing board you have, because I would like a really nice ironing board that I will keep forever. The current one I have is not my forever ironing board. Ta-da! Is this fabric just absolutely fabulous? The spider webs are actually metallic gold. And they have these dark burgundy roses and periwinkle moth butterfly things. I haven't looked at it carefully enough to see if they're moths or butterflies. And I used up all of my fabric to make this tote bag, a drawstring one that is delightful. And on the inside I used a maroon canvas to give it extra sturdiness. And that is a brown canvas I used on the bottom. And then the other one is more of like a 100 gram project bag. And this one I had to make a little bit wider because I didn't have quite enough left. So I used this brown fabric that I think is called Leaves or something like that, Leaves at Joann's, but to me they look like knit stitches. And I've had that fabric for quite a bit. I don't know if they have it there currently, but I've had it for a while. On the inside, I have these dots, stripes. I think Joann's had a fat quarter sale, and so this inner lining fabric came from that. I did a little bit different drawstring this time that has like a little, I don't know what you would call it on top. It kind of looks like a scrunchie to me. But usually I do a drawstring channel on top, like on this one, where I attach the fabric separately and make those channels. But I just thought I would do something different, and it looks fun. And my fabric was really long, and it didn't quite work for me to do it the other direction, and so this works out really well. I kind of wanted a long bag because I feel like then my yarn cake sits on the bottom and my project sits right on top, and it's perfect for like a hat, and that's what's in here, but I'll show you that later. And yeah, I just love it. It's so October, like a little bit spooky. And I will give you a disclaimer here. I love October, but I'm scared of everything. So I don't really like creepy, scary things, but I don't feel like this is creepy, scary. Like this is definitely an October vibe, but not creepy, scary. So I like this. I'm okay with this. And I didn't say this last time, and I feel like I should say it now. I do not use a pattern for any of my project bags. I do not use a specific tutorial. I have made probably hundreds of bags at this point, and I just enjoy the freedom of doing whatever I want. There are tons of tutorials and patterns out there on YouTube and the internet. Some are free, some are paid for. Some sewing shops offer classes as well, so if that's something you're interested in, I would recommend you go check that out. The fabrics that I used in these two particular bags are all from Joann Fabrics, and yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about that. We are on to the works in progress section. I think the first one I'll share with you is the one that's in this super cute bag that I just shared with you, and it is another classic ribbed hat. And this one I think will be for my mom. This colorway is Fresh Fig, and it's a lovely heathery red-toned purple. And I've just started it, so here we are. And this Progress Keeper is made by my friend Maria, who has an Etsy shop that's Forest Charm. This one, I'm not sure it's focusing very well. It has an oak leaf on it and a gemstone. And the stitch marker here is also by Maria. There's an amethyst bead on it. And this is the project that I keep with me in my purse, because as I am driving my kids around to different things, there's oftentimes a lot of waiting. And so this is a project that is very easy for me to pick up and put down wherever, whenever. I don't have to count anything, at least until I get to the crown decrease section. But the rest of it, there's 80 rounds, I think I usually do, 80 to 85 rounds. And so there's lots of knitting time that can be had here and there. The next work in progress to share with you is in this lovely bag by Beautiful Sister. The fabric is so fun and whimsical and autumnal. There are these fairies and mushrooms and moths and moons and hedgehogs. It's very woodland fairy-ish. And in this project bag I have a pair of socks that I just leave in the car. So I work on them here and there, and the yarn I'm using for this pair of socks is Patton's Croy. I picked it up at my local Michael's. It's classified as a fingering weight yarn, but I think it knits up closer to sport weight. This yarn is super hardy, goes through the washing machine. I don't usually put them in the dryer, so I don't know how it works in the dryer, but it's a 75-25 wool nylon, and it comes in 166 yards for 50 grams, and it comes pre-wound, so you don't need a winder. This colorway is turquoise stripes. Just make sure when you pick it up that you pick it up from the same dye lot, or don't if you don't mind potentially mismatching socks. I did wind mine back up. So when I first bought them, I actually bought the yarn because I was mad at my ball winder because it wasn't working. And everything was getting all messed up, and so I was just mad. And so we happened to go to Michael's. I was there with the kids, and I bought 50 grams of this yarn, and I figured, okay, I don't have to wind it, so I'm going to get it. And then later on, I did end up winding it because I don't like to center pull because I feel like it gets really messy at the end, and that bothers me, and I don't like tangles. And my winder got fixed. Something was just off on it. And so then I wound it, and it's much easier to pull from the outside, because when I pull from the outside of the yarn, here's an example, here's another one, it just bounces around everywhere and is annoying. So now that I'm pulling from two cakes, it's much less annoying. There are different shades of green here. It's very jewel toned, but also, well, yeah, it's jewel toned. There are different shades of green. It does stripe. So here's where I am with that. And this Fox Progress Keeper is by Yura of Knit Boop Studio. And I'm knitting them cuff down as I knit most of my socks, and I'm knitting them in tandem, so each on their own 9-inch circular needles. And because I find this sock yarn to be thicker than a fingering weight yarn, I am knitting them on US 2 needles, and they are creating a lovely knit 2 purl 2 fabric, which I'm doing for the whole leg. I'll probably do a shadow wrap heel and then do the knit 2 purl 2 on the top but stockinette on the bottom, I think. And I haven't decided if these socks are for my husband or for my dad. They have the same size feet, so we'll see when I finish. They'll probably be for my dad because I think I've knit my husband a few pairs already for Christmas and his birthday, which are both in December. So these will probably be more, well, yeah, I think these will be for my dad. So knit 2 purl 2, which creates a nice stretchy fabric, and this yarn is very gift friendly, I feel like, because it doesn't have to be hand washed and it's durable, so don't have to worry about like holes or snagging or things like that. So hopefully those will be done in the next month because I'd like to cast on more socks. Speaking of wanting to cast on everything, the other day when I got home, I pulled out one of my Ripple camisoles and I put that on under a sweatshirt and had on like fleece pants, and it was so cozy and comfortable and just what I needed. And so I thought I want to make another one. I have 2 so far, and I would love to just keep a string of them going because they are so wearable. And I mentioned previously that I use them as an under layering piece, and so I feel like I always need a little bit of that extra warmth. So I had to wind another thing of yarn to cast on another one. The yarn that I'm using is dyed by Earl Grey Fiber Company, and I had bought this yarn a while back. It is in the Silver Needle Sock Base, which is a 3-ply 80-10-10 superwash merino nylon. It's kind of ripped there, so I'm not even sure why I'm showing it to you because you might not be able to read it very well. But the colorway is Autumn Walk, so it's perfect. Here is the yarn. It is a lovely light pink with deep purples, golds, and oranges. And it's soft. There's a slight halo to it. I don't feel like cashmere yarn is the most durable for socks, so I never intended on having this for socks, but maybe a hat or now a camisole. So the pattern I'm using is by Jessie Made Designs. I have the Ripple Bralette pattern, and I'm just modifying it to be the Ripple Camisole. I don't have the Ripple Camisole pattern. She does have a pattern for that, so if you would rather go that route, I say go that route. And so instead, I am using the Ripple Bralette pattern, following the size medium instructions to give me no ease at my natural waist. I think it's still like 5 inches of negative ease for my bust circumference, but I didn't want it tight around my natural waist. And so I knit about 13 inches for the body. It stretches a lot. It is a ribbed pattern, and I'm able to get a whole camisole out of it, out of 100 grams of fingering weight yarn. This yarn is not light fingering. I think it's slightly under 400 yards for 100 grams. So I just need to weigh my yarn before and after a round, or before and after knitting an inch, or before and after 10 rounds. Those are all different ways that I do my yarn management. And then just see how far I can get with that. So I think I should be okay. Here is the very start of it. And again, I have Progress Keeper and Stitch Marker by my friend Maria of Woolen Forest. She has an update coming up that has these gourd Progress Keepers and Stitch Markers, and so far I've always missed it, the ones that are orange, and I really hope that I can jump on this time. I think it's on Friday the 13th, which is exciting. But we'll see. I would love to get those orange ones. I think it's carnelian is the gemstone for it. Yeah, we'll see. But yes, these ones I've had for quite some time. I think since she opened the shop several years ago. But there's a leaf and a yellowy gemstone on it, and then the stitch marker here is a rose gold heart with, I think, rose quartz on it. But yeah, I've just barely started. I just had an itch to cast it on, you know, just in case I finished something else and I really needed something. That's my something that I really had to cast on, just in case I needed something. Last time, I think it was last time, I shared with you my Building Blocks Drop Slipover by Amy Scher, and it was a gray tweedy one, and I said I immediately wanted another one, and so here we are. I did warn you that I cast on a lot of things, right? Yeah, I did say that. This one is using the same yarn, Hedgerow, which is a slightly thick and thin, toothier, non-superwash yarn. I don't know where my tag is. I thought it was in my bag, but it is not. Oh, haha, it's in the yarn cake, right where I put it. This yarn is 93% merino, 3.5% cashmere, 3.5% mulberry silk. Comes in 243 yards for 100 grams. And I will say that of all the yarn that I've received for this, none of them have been 100 grams yet. They've all been somewhere between like 95 to 98 grams, just as a heads up to you if you're buying like just the right amount. And I don't know if other ones would be different. Just from experience, the ones that I have are not 100 grams to start. This colorway is House Wren. It is this lovely brown that has specks of red, brown, and cream. And the Building Blocks Drop is knit bottom up. And I am currently knitting the ribbing section on US 6 or 4mm needles. Here we are. I have another Progress Keeper on here by Maria. This one is a crow. And I love that. I think, you know, crow, house wren, bird theme. And I'm going to pretty much knit it the same way I knit my gray one. So if you're curious on how that process goes, I would go watch that episode so I don't have to repeat myself. I think the only thing I might change is knit the body slightly longer, just a little bit. And that way I just have a different one. I did initially cast on to do a split hem, but then changed my mind. So I ripped that out and started over. I wasn't very far. I think I was just like an inch or so in, and then I thought, I don't want to do that. So I took it out and then recast on, and I'm not doing a split hem. For the stockinette portion, I think that's where I'm going to extend it just a little bit. I did have a little bit of yarn left over in my gray one, so I know I have a little bit of wiggle room. If I end up going too far, I do have a little bit of gray that I could use for the ribbing if I wanted to. I think because they're both neutrals, it would work just fine. I don't know. We'll see when I get there. So no hurry for this one. I mean, yes, I would love to have it done in the next month or so, but you know, I also cast on a lot of other things, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think the next one I'm going to share with you is my Stratified by Tiffany Lynn. I've made a good amount of progress on it, and I've also made a decision about it. So let's see here. This is where I'm at. I had not split for the sleeves last time. I love how it's turning out. I had gone through all the details last time I shared, but I will just kind of give you an overview maybe. The yarn I'm using is Linen Quill by Pearl Soho, and this is all yarn I've purchased in the last several years that have gone in many different projects, and so I'm using the remaining yarn for this. So I just calculated how much yarn I had based on how many grams, and then holding a double, and then matched that up with the approximate yardages and the pattern to kind of see which colors I had enough of to use. And if I didn't, would I be okay with subbing in another color? So instead of using 5 total, maybe I use 7. However, I've decided that I am going to knit the cropped length and I'm going to turn it into a slip over. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to knit the sleeves a bit because there's more of the main color on that section to go, and then I'm going to knit a cuff. And then I'm going to follow the pattern recommendations for the cropped length, and then I'll be done. And so I definitely won't be playing yarn chicken with any of the colors because all of the color yardages in the pattern are for long sleeves or cropped sleeves. And I think I'm just not going to do that. So I really like how it looks. I just feel like it's going to go really well over things. Like this long sleeve shirt color I have right now would look nice underneath. I can still wear this over plaid, I think. I think I have some options. So that's what's going to happen with this one, which means it'll probably be done by the next time we chat, if that is approximately 2 weeks from now. And I am looking forward to sharing how I style it and just give you more details. I just didn't think I needed to rehash all of the pattern details again. If you want to look it up, feel free to do that on Tiffany Lynn's website or go back to the previous episode where I chatted about the start of the project. Next project is one I have not shared in a while. It is actually going to the same family that the 3 hats I knit are for. This is a blanket that I have been working on since April. And I will preface this with saying that I am not a blanket knitter. I'm just not. But I am working on this and I'm going to get through it, and I'm making some changes and it'll be almost done. So here it is. This is inspired by the free pattern Pearl Soho has for the Amazing Log Cabin blanket. I've made several changes to it. The original pattern uses sport weight yarn. I'm using Knit Picks, oh, what is it called? Knit Picks Hawthorne, which is classified as fingering weight, but it's definitely a heavy fingering weight or a light sport weight yarn. Here is the tag. And this is 80% superwash fine Highland wool, 20% nylon. And this yarn comes in 357 yards for 100 grams. And I have a bunch of yarn that some of it was a new cake and some of them were from previous projects. But I wanted to use all mostly tonal semi-solid yarns. Some of them are speckled. And I just wanted to create this beautiful fun canvas, and I altered the stitch counts from the pattern. I'm using a US 8 needle, and I am enjoying the process of making it. It's just taking longer and longer as the rows get longer and longer. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to be a lap size blanket. I'm going to maybe do one more stripe after this color that I'm working on right now. And then because the sides have live stitches, I do need to go back and maybe do a border. We'll have to see how much yarn, like what colors of yarn I have the most left of in order to make that happen and not have 2 that are exactly the same next to each other. But I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do this, finish this, like, I don't know what you would call this. Aqua e teal? No. Not sure what I would call this color, but it's very pretty. Aqua teal is what I'm gonna call it. So I might do one more, so 4 maybe, and then bind off there, and then do my 2 sides, as long as it's not going to come out looking too long. But I think it's actually a really nice lap size blanket, and I love the colors, and I think it's going to go really well actually with the hats. Let's see here. Not that you have to wear the hats while you use the blanket, but I feel like it's a really beautiful set. And so I just have to finish this blanket in the next couple of weeks. That will be my main priority. And then it will be done. I think that is it for all my works in progress to share with you. Oh, you know what? I never showed you my cool new spiderweb mug. I bought this from Target. I couldn't help it. I don't have a cauldron mug. I have hot spiced cider in here and yarn apparently. I have made aquafaba meringues recently. I could have made them real cute and put eyeballs on it and made them look like funny ghosts, but I didn't. We just ate them. They were delicious. And the reason I made aquafaba meringue was because I had made roasted chickpeas and from a can, and when you make roasted chickpeas from a can, you have all of that chickpea juice, and you can use that to make meringues. That's the aquafaba. I will link to the recipes that I used below. They were delicious. It does not taste like chickpeas, garbanzo beans. It does not taste like beans, and they're really yummy. So that was fun. And then I've made soft pretzels recently. Those are always a treat. They're so quick, so easy, and so good. We love soft pretzels around here. It has also been nice because as we're like in and out constantly with the kids' activities, it is something I can make quickly and then we can grab and they can eat it in the car and not be super messy. For reading, I finished Firekeeper's Daughter. Really good read, really important read with a lot of serious topics that need to be heard. And I talked about it last time, so I'm not going to go over like the overview of it again, but I did finish it. I really enjoyed it. Another book that I started and finished that I didn't talk about last time is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, new to me author who has apparently written a ton of books. And when I mentioned it to one of my brothers, he said it was his favorite author, and I'm thinking, what have you been holding out on me? But he said it was one of his favorite authors, and so he gave me some recommendations on books that he has read by Sanderson. And I'm looking at the book here. I should hopefully have a picture here on the screen as well. Tress of the Emerald Sea was published in January 2023, so it's a newer book. It's fantasy. It's almost 400 pages. It's classified under young adult. There's adventure, there are pirates, there's magic. I found the writing to be witty, dry humor, poetic, and it made me think. It made me stop and think about some things. And there's actually knitting in it as well. There's sock knitting, there's darning, there's tea, there's these teacups. It's just like a fun, quirky book that was very enjoyable to read. And I don't typically, I feel like, gravitate towards books with pirates or things like that, but it worked in here and I enjoyed it. I'm trying to think. Oh, there was a quote that I put on an Instagram post, and I'm going to read it to you because I really like that excerpt, and I feel like there are a lot of parts in the book that I would have highlighted if it was my book, but it's a library, so I didn't do that. I'm going to read you that excerpt. Well, this isn't the part of the story where you ask questions, so kindly keep them to yourself. That said, you must understand that this is a tale about people who are both what they seem and not what they seem, simultaneously. A story of contradictions. In other words, it is a story about human beings. I just love that. And the whole book talks to you in that way. The narrator is so funny, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something like that, recommend. Another book that I would like to share with you today is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I picked this also up from the library. So it flips back and forth, following the life of this young woman in her 20s, kind of, between the 1700s in France and then modern day in New York in like 2013, 2014, 2015. And it flips back and forth. And I don't generally love books where you switch back and forth between every chapter because I find it really distracting. It didn't bother me too bad here, but I did find myself at some point wanting to just like skip every other chapter and read through one, and then skip every other chapter and read through the other one. Yeah. So maybe those kind of books don't work for me, but I like the idea of the story. I like the writing style. I find the descriptions to be immersive and not overly drawn out. And I'm curious about the characters and I want to know more. I want to keep reading. And so I like want to know more about this main character. I want to know more about the side characters. And so I find that to be an indicator for me of a good read. We are on to food for thought, and I have just a little bit of one to share. It was something that was talked about, I think, on our local news recently, and they were talking about Mental Health Day, and the phrase was, well, I don't know if it's a phrase, but catchphrase, or I don't know. Micro doses of connection. And I feel like I've talked about this briefly in previous episodes. I don't know when, where, but micro doses of connection. And I probably didn't use that phrase because I don't know, I've never heard of that phrase before, but it's talking about like people yearning for those little bits of connection. Maybe it's a smile, maybe it's eye contact, maybe it's opening the door for somebody, maybe it's paying for someone else's coffee in line behind you, maybe it's, well, it's just those little things. It doesn't always have to cost something, but the fact that you're interacting with somebody and it's just like here and there, and they are things that somebody else can appreciate, those things matter. And those things give us that little bit of like a, ooh, that was nice. And when we don't have those, you may not notice it right away, but over time that hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can't tell what is missing, but you don't get those little ooh throughout the day. And I feel like it's different than social media's likes and shares and all those. They don't give that same little burst of good energy. They're much more fleeting, and they're just much less meaningful. And think about it this way. If the internet were to just disappear, where would you be? How would you feel? What are all those likes and followers and any of those things about? If the internet were just to disappear, so would those numbers, right? So when you think about, when I think about the connections and the feelings and the things that matter to me, they generally don't have anything to do with the internet or like digital things like numbers or things like that. They are the things that, well, the things that matter to me are maybe that smile, maybe remembering that that person opened the door for me when my arms were full of groceries, or maybe it was the person that wished me a good day at the store and I don't even know them, or maybe it's the cashier connecting with me on something. Just anything, just like your quote unquote mundane everyday life. And those are the things that stick with me. Those are the things that make me feel happy. Those are the things that I'll remember, or maybe I'll remember, I don't know, but more likely to remember the next day or at the end of the day, or I'll tell my husband, oh, guess what happened today? I guess my point is to think about what those micro doses of connection do for you, and maybe how we can put out more of those. How, you know, without bursting into people's spaces or like making anyone uncomfortable because you're like in their bubble or in their zone. But like, I don't know, just something. And I'm thinking about the other day where it was during our fall colors trip, and my mom saw this other mom struggling a little bit with her 3 kids, and my mom went up and told her that she was doing a great job, helped her clean up the table, helped her kind of like pull things together a little bit. And it was for like maybe a minute, maybe 30 seconds. But they were hugging each other by the end of it, and this was someone my mom had no idea who they were, but she saw them struggling. She saw a mom that needed an extra hand, and so she went over and gave them that extra hand. And then we all went about our way. And I feel like that's a little bit bigger than a micro dose of connection, but meaningful, right? And yeah, so that's what's been on my heart. That's what's been on my mind. And maybe it resonates with you. Maybe it'll spur a little bit something. Maybe you'll write a card and send snail mail to somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, and just send a thinking of you, or call a friend up for coffee, or go for a walk with somebody, or maybe even by yourself. Maybe you need that time. Maybe you just need those 15 minutes to yourself to walk around and clear your brain and not have to talk to anybody, not have to answer any questions. Maybe that's your own little micro dose of connection, and maybe you'll pass somebody on the trail and smile at them and give that nod and keep going. Yeah, so that's what I'm leaving you with today. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors. Cheers. Oh, I got to turn it around for the spider web. Cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time.